Captain Ziegther stood on the bridge of his massive warship and smiled. His sharp teeth gleamed in the red light that filled the command center. Around him, dozens of alien crew members worked at their stations. The sound of beeping computers and humming engines filled the air. This was the Shadowbane, the most feared ship in the entire galaxy. The Shadowbane was huge. It stretched 3 kilometers from front to back. Its dark metal hull was covered with weapons. Plasma cannons lined both sides of the ship. Quantum torpedo tubes pointed forward like the fangs of a giant beast. Energy shields surrounded the entire vessel in a protective bubble. No enemy weapon had ever broken through those shields. Ziegther walked across the bridge with slow, confident steps. His boots made sharp, clicking sounds on the metal floor. He was tall and thin, with gray skin and yellow eyes that seemed to glow in the darkness. Like all Vorthak warriors, he had been bred for war. His people had conquered 17 star systems over the past 200 years. They had never lost a single major battle. "Status report," Ziegther said to his second-in-command. "All weapons are ready, Captain," replied Sub-Commander Vex-High. "The fleet is in perfect formation. Our scouts have confirmed the target location." Ziegther nodded. The target was a small blue planet called Earth. The humans who lived there had recently joined something called the Galactic Defense Coalition. This was a group of weak alien races who tried to protect each other from the Vorthak Empire. It never worked. The Vorthak always won. The captain moved to the main viewing screen. It showed the star map of their current location. They were still 3 weeks away from the human solar system, but that gave him time to plan the attack. He had studied the intelligence reports about Earth. The humans were primitives. Their biggest warships were only 200 meters long. They still used chemical rockets to travel between planets. Some of their weapons were barely beyond nuclear technology. "How many ships do the humans have?" Ziegther asked. "Intelligence estimates less than 50 combat vessels," Vex-High replied. "Most are small patrol boats. They have no real military fleet." Ziegther laughed. The sound was harsh and cold. His crew joined in the laughter. They had heard this story many times before. Another weak species thought they could stand against the mighty Vorthak Empire. Another planet would soon bow before their superior power. The Shadowbane had a history that struck fear into every corner of the galaxy. Over the past century, it had destroyed more than 400 enemy ships. Entire fleets had been wiped out by this single vessel. The ship's main plasma cannon could crack the surface of a planet. Its quantum torpedoes could punch through any known armor. Its shields had never failed, not even once. Ziegther remembered his first victory aboard the Shadowbane. He had been a young officer then, serving under the previous captain. They had faced a desperate alliance of 6 different alien races. The enemy had brought over 200 ships to the battle. It had not mattered. The Shadowbane had led the Vorthak fleet to complete victory. Not a single enemy vessel had escaped. That battle had made Ziegther famous throughout the Empire. He had been promoted to captain and given command of the legendary warship. Since then, he had won dozens more battles. Each victory added to his reputation. Each defeated enemy proved Vorthak's superiority once again. The bridge doors opened with a soft hiss. Admiral Corthan entered the command center. He was older than Ziegther, with deep scars across his face from ancient battles. The admiral commanded the entire Vorthak war fleet. He rarely visited individual ships unless something important was happening. "Admiral," Ziegther said, turning to face his superior officer. "Captain," Corthan replied, "I wanted to discuss the Earth mission with you personally." The 2 officers walked to a private corner of the bridge. Around them, the crew continued their work. The steady hum of the ship's engines provided background noise for their conversation. "The High Command is curious about these humans," Corthan said quietly. "They seem different from our usual enemies." "Different how?" Ziegler asked. They are weak. Their technology is primitive. This will be another easy victory. Corthan nodded slowly. Perhaps, but our scouts have reported some unusual activity in their system. The humans appear to be preparing for our arrival. Let them prepare, Ziegler said with confidence. It will not help them. The Shadowbane alone could destroy their entire planet. We are bringing a full battle fleet. This will be over quickly. The Admiral studied the star map on the nearest display screen. The humans have been fighting wars among themselves for thousands of years. They may have some tactical knowledge. Ziegler dismissed this concern with a wave of his hand. Primitive. Warfare means nothing against our technology. Their chemical explosives cannot penetrate our shields. Their metal projectiles will bounce off our armor like pebbles. They have no chance. Corthan looked thoughtful. Remember, Captain, overconfidence has been the downfall of many warriors. Do not underestimate any enemy, no matter how weak they appear. I understand, Admiral, Ziegler replied. But I have studied the intelligence reports carefully. The humans have nothing that can threaten us. This will be a demonstration of Vorthek power, nothing more. The Admiral left the bridge without another word. Ziegler returned to his command station. He pulled up the detailed files about Earth and its defenders. The information confirmed everything he already knew. The humans had a few dozen small warships. Their weapons were basic plasma cannons and nuclear missiles. Their shields were weak energy barriers that could barely stop asteroid impacts. According to the reports, Earth's military was led by someone called Admiral Jake Morrison. The human commander had some experience in local conflicts, but nothing that compared to galactic warfare. He commanded a force that was laughably small compared to what the Vorthek could bring to battle. Ziegler smiled again as he read about Earth's defenses. They had built some orbital platforms around their planet. These stations carried larger weapons than their ships, but they were fixed in place. They could not maneuver or retreat. The Shadowbane could destroy them one by one from long range. Human ships had names like Liberty, Victory, and Defender. Such hopeful names for such weak vessels. Soon those names would be nothing but entries in the Vorthek victory records. Another species would learn that resistance to the Empire was futile. Subcommander Vex High approached with a new report. Captain, the scout ships have returned with updated intelligence. The humans are indeed preparing for battle. They have moved most of their fleet to defend their homeworld. Excellent, Ziegler said. They are gathering in one place to make our job easier. How many ships are we facing? Approximately 60 vessels, Captain. All small by our standards. The largest appears to be about 300 meters long. Ziegler laughed again. The largest human ship was 1/10 the size of the Shadowbane. This would not be a battle. It would be target practice. He could already imagine the victory. Celebration after Earth's surrender. The Vorthek fleet continued its steady advance toward the human solar system. Behind the Shadowbane came 25 other warships, each one powerful enough to defeat an entire human fleet. The combined firepower of the Vorthek Armada could sterilize planets. No force in the galaxy had ever successfully opposed them in open battle. Captain Ziegler walked to the front of the bridge and stared out at the stars ahead. Somewhere in that direction waited the small blue planet called Earth. Its people had no idea what was coming for them. Soon they would learn the same lesson that hundreds of other species had learned. The Vorthek Empire was unstoppable. Resistance was pointless. Surrender was the only option for survival. In 3 weeks, the name Earth would be added to the long list of Vorthek conquests. The Shadowbane would claim another victory, and Captain Ziegler would prove once again why he commanded the deadliest warship in the galaxy. Admiral Jake Morrison sat in his office deep inside the Earth Defense Command Center. The room was filled with computer screens showing information from across the solar system. Red warning lights blinked on several displays. Each light represented another Vorthek scout ship moving closer to Earth. Morrison was 52 years old with gray hair and tired eyes. He had been a soldier for 30 years. He had fought in the Mars Colony War and the asteroid belt conflicts. But nothing in his experience had prepared him for fighting aliens from another star system. "Sir, we have another update from our deep space sensors," said Commander Lisa Barnes as she entered the office. She was Morrison's best tactical officer. Her short brown hair was neat and her uniform was perfectly pressed, but Morrison could see the worry in her green eyes. "What do the sensors show?" Morrison asked. "The main Vorthak fleet is still 3 weeks away," Barnes reported. "But their scouts are getting closer. Captain Foster's ship made contact with 3 enemy vessels near Jupiter yesterday." Morrison nodded. He had read Captain Danny Foster's battle report that morning. The USS Liberty had fought a running battle with alien scouts for 6 hours. Foster had managed to damage 1 enemy ship before escaping, but the cost had been high. The Liberty had lost half its weapons and most of its armor. What did we learn from the encounter? Morrison asked. Barnes activated a wall display that showed technical readouts from the battle. "The good news is that their shields have a weakness. When we change our weapon frequencies rapidly, their defenses cannot adapt fast enough. Foster's crew managed to overload 1 scout shields completely. And the bad news? Their technology is still far superior to ours," Barnes said quietly. "One of their scout ships is more powerful than our best destroyer. And they are sending 26 warships to attack us." Morrison stood up and walked to the window. Outside, he could see the lights of Earth's largest city stretching to the horizon. Somewhere up there, beyond the atmosphere, were the orbital defense platforms that represented humanity's last hope. Each platform carried the most advanced weapons Earth could build. But even all of them together might not be enough. "Where is Lieutenant Colonel Clark?" Morrison asked. "Ryan is in the engineering section," Barnes replied. "He has been working on the shield modifications for 18 hours straight." Morrison left his office and walked through the corridors of the command center. Everywhere he looked, people were working frantically to prepare Earth's defenses. Technicians were installing new weapon systems. Communication specialists were coordinating with ships across the solar system. Everyone knew that humanity's survival depended on their work. He found Lieutenant Colonel Ryan Clark in the main engineering bay. Clark was a thin man with messy blonde hair and thick glasses. He looked like he had not slept in days. Around him, dozens of engineers were building new types of weapons and armor. "Ryan, what is our status?" Morrison asked. Clark looked up from a complex blueprint. "We have made some progress. Admiral, Dr. Susan Wright's team has developed new shield modulators based on the Liberty's battle data. If we can install them on enough ships, we might be able to survive the first enemy attack. How many ships can we upgrade?" "Maybe 40 or 50, Clark said. "We are working as fast as we can, but we need more time. The Vorthek technology is incredibly advanced. We are trying to catch up to thousands of years of development in just a few weeks." Morrison understood the problem. Earth's best scientists were brilliant, but they were starting from far behind. The aliens had been traveling between stars for centuries. Humans had only reached their own moon 50 years ago. "What about the new weapons Colonel Johnson is developing?" Morrison asked. Clark smiled for the first time in days. "Pete's kinetic interceptors are showing real promise. His team has found a way to accelerate metal projectiles to incredible speeds. The aliens' armor is strong, but it was designed to stop energy weapons. Physical impacts might penetrate their defenses." Morrison felt a small spark of hope. Maybe humanity had a chance after all. He left the engineering section and took an elevator to the command center's main floor. Here, dozens of officers were monitoring the approaching alien fleet and coordinating Earth's response. Captain Danny Foster was standing near the central display, talking with several other ship commanders. His left arm was in a sling from injuries received during the battle near Jupiter, but he had insisted on returning to duty immediately. "Captain Foster," Morrison called out, "how is your ship?" "The Liberty will be ready for battle in 2 days, Admiral," Foster replied. "My crew is making repairs around the clock. We learned a lot about fighting these aliens, and we want another chance at them." Morrison was impressed by Foster's determination. The man had barely survived his first encounter with the enemy, but he was eager to fight again. This kind of courage would be essential in the battles to come. "What did you learn about their tactics?" Morrison asked. Foster activated a display showing the space battle near Jupiter. "The Vorthix ships move in very predictable patterns, Admiral. They rely on their superior firepower to win battles. They do not expect enemies to use hit-and-run tactics or unconventional strategies." "Explain." "Their ships are powerful but slow," Foster continued. "They form up in traditional battle lines and try to destroy everything in front of them. When we used submarine-style tactics, attacking and then retreating quickly, they did not know how to respond. This was valuable intelligence." Morrison had been worried that the aliens would be tactical geniuses as well as technologically superior. But it seemed they had become overconfident after centuries of easy victories. Lieutenant Amy Rodriguez, Foster's navigator, joined the conversation. She was a young woman with dark hair and intense brown eyes. "Admiral, I have been studying the enemy ship movements. I think I can predict where they will position their fleet when they attack Earth." "Show me," Morrison said. Rodriguez brought up a three-dimensional map of the solar system. "Based on their approach vector and past battle tactics, they will likely form a battle line here," she said, pointing to a location near Mars orbit. "They will try to destroy our orbital defenses first, then attack the planet directly." Morrison studied the tactical display. If Rodriguez was correct, Earth's defenders might have an opportunity to surprise the enemy. Traditional military doctrine said that weaker forces should avoid direct confrontation. But what if they did the opposite of what the aliens expected? "Lisa," Morrison called to Commander Barnes, "I want you to work with Captain Foster and Lieutenant Rodriguez on a new battle plan. Assume the enemy will use conventional tactics. How can we take advantage of that?" Barnes nodded and moved to the tactical planning station. Morrison watched as his best officers began developing strategies that might give humanity a fighting chance. Around them, the command center buzzed with activity as Earth prepared for the greatest battle in human history. Colonel Pete Johnson entered the command center carrying a thick folder of technical documents. He was a stocky man with graying hair and steady hands. His weapons development team had been working non-stop to create new types of armor and ammunition. "Admiral, I have good news," Johnson said. "We have successfully tested the new kinetic interceptors. Major Kate Phillips led a test flight yesterday, and the results exceeded our expectations. How much damage can they do?" Morrison asked. "A direct hit from one of our new interceptors can punch through 6 meters of standard ship armor," Johnson replied. "The alien scouts had armor that was only 3 meters thick. We should be able to damage their larger ships as well." Morrison felt his spirits rising. Maybe Earth's defenders were not as helpless as everyone had believed. If they could combine new weapons with unconventional tactics, they might surprise the overconfident aliens. "How many interceptors can you produce?" Morrison asked. "We have converted 12 orbital platforms to carry the new weapons," Johnson said. "Each platform can fire 20 interceptors before needing to reload. We also have mobile launchers on some of our larger ships." The pieces of Earth's defense plan were beginning to come together. New weapons, modified shields, and unconventional tactics might be enough to give the aliens a real fight. Morrison looked around the command center at all the people working to save their world. They were tired, scared, and facing impossible odds. But they had not given up hope. The Vorthek Empire had conquered dozens of worlds and defeated hundreds of fleets, but they had never faced an enemy quite like humanity. Earth's defenders were about to show the galaxy what humans could do when fighting for their survival. Major Alex Turner sat in the cockpit of his fighter and watched the radar screen. Hundreds of small green dots showed the positions of human ships scattered throughout the solar system. Each dot represented a crew that was ready to die for Earth. Turner had been flying combat missions for 15 years, but he had never seen anything like this. His squadron was positioned near the asteroid belt, waiting for the signal to attack. Around him, 24 other pilots were making final checks on their weapons and engines. These men and women had volunteered for what everyone knew was a suicide mission. The Vorthek fleet was approaching fast, and Earth's defenders were about to find out if their desperate plan would work. "Lightning Squadron, this is Control," came the voice of Commander Helen Gray over the radio. "Enemy fleet has entered the outer solar system. All units prepare for Operation Swarm." Turner smiled grimly. Operation Swarm was Admiral Morrison's crazy plan to use hundreds of small ships instead of fighting a traditional space battle. The humans would attack like a swarm of angry bees, hitting the aliens from all directions at once. It had never been tried before in space combat. "Copy that, Control," Turner replied. "Lightning Squadron is ready." He looked at his instruments one more time. His fighter was fast but lightly armored. It carried 2 plasma cannons and 4 of the new kinetic missiles that Colonel Johnson's team had developed. Against the massive Vorthek warships, it was like bringing a knife to a gunfight. But Turner had faith in his fellow pilots, and the element of surprise that Lieutenant Carol Davis was flying on Turner's wing. She was only 23 years old and had been in space combat for less than a year. But she had shown incredible skill during training exercises. Her fighter was equipped with the latest shield modulators that Dr. Wright's team had created. "Major Turner, I'm getting nervous readings on my sensors," Davis said over the radio. "The enemy ships are much larger than our intelligence reports indicated." Turner switched to long-range sensors and felt his heart sink. The Vorthek fleet was enormous. The lead ship, which had to be the legendary Shadowbane, was bigger than anything humans had ever built. It was followed by more than 20 other warships, each one capable of destroying Earth's entire fleet. "Stay calm, Lieutenant," Turner said. "Remember your training. We are not trying to match their firepower. We are going to confuse them and hit them where they are weak." Across the solar system, other human commanders were watching the same terrifying sight. Captain Danny Foster was on the bridge of the USS Liberty, which had been repaired after the battle near Jupiter. His ship was hidden behind one of Saturn's moons, waiting for the right moment to strike. "Tactical Officer Murphy, what is your assessment?" Foster asked. Lieutenant Greg Murphy studied his displays carefully. "The aliens are maintaining a tight formation, Captain. They have arranged their ships in a perfect battle line, just like Lieutenant Rodriguez predicted. They expect us to meet them head-on." Foster nodded. The Vorthek were following exactly the same tactics they had used for centuries. They would advance in formation, destroy everything in their path, then demand surrender. It was an effective strategy against conventional enemies, but the humans were about to show them something completely different. In the asteroid belt, Chief Engineer Bobby Martinez was making final adjustments to the mining ship Prospector. The vessel had been converted into a mobile weapons platform, carrying dozens of kinetic interceptors. Martinez had worked for 20 years in space mining, but now he was preparing to fight the deadliest fleet in the galaxy. "All systems are green," Martinez reported to his captain. "We have full power to weapons and engines." The Prospector was just one of hundreds of civilian ships that had been hastily converted for battle. Cargo haulers, passenger transports, even scientific research vessels had been fitted with weapons and pressed into service. Earth's entire spacefaring population had become a military force. Captain Zeekther stood on the bridge of the Shadowbane and watched the human solar system grow larger on his displays. His sensors showed dozens of small ships scattered throughout the system, but they were not forming up for battle. Instead, they seemed to be hiding behind planets and asteroids. "The humans are cowards," Sub-Commander Vexhai said with contempt. "They are running away before we even begin the attack." Zeekther was not so sure. Something felt wrong about the situation. In all his years of conquest, he had never seen an enemy fleet spread out like this. Most species gathered their ships together to make a final desperate stand. The humans were doing something different. "Maintain formation," Zeekther ordered. "Advance to the planet and destroy their orbital defenses. Once we control the high ground, we can hunt down their scattered ships at our leisure." The Vorthik fleet continued its steady advance toward Earth. The massive ships moved in perfect formation, their weapons ready to unleash devastation on any target that appeared. Zeekther had used these same tactics to conquer 17 star systems. There was no reason to change now that Admiral Morrison watched the alien fleet from Earth's primary command center. The enemy ships were still several hours away from the planet, but already their presence was affecting Earth's defenders. Some of the civilian ship crews were beginning to panic as they realized the true size of the threat they faced. "All units, this is Admiral Morrison," he said over the fleet communication system. "I know the enemy looks overwhelming, but remember that we have advantages they do not expect. We know this solar system better than they do. We have weapons they have never seen before. Most importantly, we are fighting for our homes and families." "Commander." Lisa Barnes stood beside Morrison, coordinating the complex battle plan. On her displays, she could see the positions of over 800 human vessels. It was the largest military operation in human history, but each ship was small and vulnerable compared to the alien warships. "Admiral, Major Turner's squadron is in position," Barnes reported. "All fighter groups are ready to begin the first wave of attacks." Morrison nodded. The plan was simple in concept, but incredibly difficult to execute. The human ships would attack in waves, striking the alien fleet from multiple directions simultaneously. Each wave would retreat before the enemy could respond effectively. Then the next wave would attack from a different angle. Dr. Susan Wright was monitoring the battle from her research station on one of the outer planets. Her team had developed the shield modulators and frequency scramblers that might give human ships a chance against Vorthek technology. Now she could only watch and hope that her inventions would work in real combat. "Dr. Wright, we are detecting unusual energy readings from the alien ships," reported her assistant, Dr. Mark Thompson. "Their shields are operating on frequencies we have never seen before." Wright studied the data carefully. "Adjust our scramblers to match those frequencies. Send the new settings to all human ships immediately." The first wave of attacks was about to begin. Major Turner's fighter squadron accelerated toward the Vorthak fleet at maximum speed. Behind them came dozens of other small attack craft, each carrying pilots who knew they might not survive the next hour. "Lightning Squadron, prepare to engage," Turner said over the radio. "Remember, hit them fast and get out. Do not try to be heroes. We need to survive long enough for this second wave to attack." Lieutenant Davis checked her weapons one final time. "Major, I have a clean target lock on the lead escort ship." "Permission to fire?" "Granted," Turner replied. "All ships, commence attack run." The human fighters dove toward the Vorthik fleet like a swarm of angry insects. Their small size and high speed made them difficult targets for the massive alien weapons. For the first time in centuries, the Shadowbane and its escorts faced an enemy that refused to fight by conventional rules. The battle for Earth's survival was about to begin, and the galaxy would never be the same. The space around Earth erupted into chaos as Major Turner's fighter squadron struck the Vorthik fleet. Brilliant flashes of light filled the darkness as human plasma cannons met alien shields. The small fighters moved like lightning, darting between the massive enemy ships and firing their weapons at close range. Lieutenant Carol Davis rolled her fighter to avoid a blast from an alien weapon. The energy beam passed so close that her cockpit windows glowed with heat. She lined up her target and fired 2 kinetic missiles at a Vorthik escort cruiser. The missiles struck the alien ship's hull and exploded in bright bursts of fire. "Direct hit," Davis shouted over the radio. "Their armor is weaker than we thought." Major Turner saw the explosion and felt a surge of hope. The new weapons were working. He aimed his fighter at another enemy ship and fired his plasma cannons. The rapid frequency changes that Dr. Wright had programmed into the weapons caused the alien shields to flicker and fail. "All fighters, concentrate fire on the escort ships," Turner ordered. "We can hurt them." The Vorthik fleet was not prepared for this type of attack. Their weapons were designed to fight large warships, not tiny fighters that moved unpredictably. The massive plasma cannons that could destroy a planet were too slow to track fast-moving targets. Captain Ziegther watched in confusion as human fighters swarmed around his fleet. His bridge crew was trying to target the small ships, but they kept disappearing behind asteroids or friendly vessels. Several of his escort ships were already showing damage from the strange human weapons. "How are these primitives penetrating our shields?" Ziegther demanded. "Their weapons are changing frequencies faster than our shields can adapt," reported the tactical officer. "We have never encountered this technology before." Ziegther felt something he had not experienced in decades: uncertainty. The humans were not fighting like any enemy he had faced before. Instead of forming battle lines, they attacked from all directions at once. Their ships appeared, fired, and disappeared before his gunners could respond. The first wave of human attacks lasted only 10 minutes, but it felt like hours to both sides. Turner's squadron had lost 6 fighters, but they had damaged 4 Vorthik ships and proven that the aliens could be hurt. As the surviving fighters retreated, the second wave of human ships moved into position. Captain Danny Foster commanded this wave from the bridge of the USS Liberty. His ship led a group of 20 destroyers and frigates, each equipped with the latest weapons and shields. They approached the Vorthak fleet from a different angle, using the cover of Saturn's rings to hide their approach. "Tactical Officer Murphy, do you have firing solutions?" Foster asked. "Yes, Captain," Lieutenant Greg Murphy replied. "The alien ships are still recovering from the first attack. Their formation is looser than before." Foster smiled grimly. The plan was working exactly as Admiral Morrison had hoped. Each wave of attacks was forcing the Vorthik to adjust their tactics, making them more vulnerable to the next wave. "All ships, commence attack run," Foster ordered. "Target their weapon systems and engines." The second wave struck the Vorthak fleet with devastating effect. The human ships were larger than the fighters and carried more powerful weapons. They concentrated their fire on specific targets, overwhelming the alien defenses through sheer volume of fire. The Liberty's main guns fired a continuous stream of plasma bolts at a Vorthik heavy cruiser. The alien ship's shields flickered and failed under the constant barrage. Kinetic missiles struck the cruiser's hull, tearing huge holes in its armor. For the first time in the battle, a Vorthak warship began to list and lose power. Chief Engineer Bobby Martinez watched from the bridge of the converted mining ship Prospector. His vessel was part of the third wave, which consisted mainly of civilian ships that had been armed for battle. Martinez knew that his converted cargo hauler was no match for a real warship, but he also knew that Earth's survival depended on every ship doing its part. "Captain, we have a clear shot at that damaged cruiser," Martinez reported to his commanding officer. "Take it," Captain Eddie Walsh replied. "Fire everything we have." The Prospector's improvised weapons opened fire on the crippled Vorthik ship. The alien cruiser was already heavily damaged, and the additional firepower from the human civilian ships was too much. The cruiser's hull cracked open, and atmosphere began venting into space. Captain Ziegler watched in horror as one of his escort ships was destroyed by a collection of human cargo vessels. These were not even military ships, yet they had managed to finish off a Vorthek cruiser. The impossible was happening before his eyes. All ships reform battle line. Ziegler ordered, concentrate firepower on the largest human groups. But the human ships refused to form up into convenient targets. As soon as the Vorthek weapons began to focus on one group, those ships would scatter and retreat while another group attacked from a different direction. It was like trying to fight a cloud of stinging insects. The battle raged for 6 hours. Wave after wave of human ships struck the Vorthek fleet, each attack coming from an unexpected direction. The aliens had superior technology, but they could not bring their full firepower to bear against enemies that refused to fight a conventional battle. Dr. Susan Wright monitored the battle from her research station and made constant adjustments to the human weapons and shields. Each time the Vorthek adapted their defenses, she found a new way to overcome them. Her team worked frantically to stay one step ahead of the alien technology. Dr. Wright, I'm detecting a command frequency that coordinates the entire Vorthek fleet, reported Dr. Mark Thompson. If we could disrupt that signal, their ships might lose coordination. Wright studied the data on her screens. You're right. Their entire fleet operates as one unit. If we can jam that frequency, each ship will have to fight independently. She began working on a signal disruptor that could interfere with the Vorthek command network. But to be effective, it would have to be delivered very close to the enemy flagship. Someone would have to fly right up to the Shadowbane itself. Colonel Pete Johnson volunteered for the mission when he heard about Dr. Wright's discovery. He was 55 years old and had been designing weapons for 30 years. His own children were among the pilots fighting the alien fleet. If there was a way to help them, he would take any risk. Admiral Morrison, I can modify a fighter to carry the signal disruptor, Johnson said over the communication link. But I'll have to get within 50 kilometers of their flagship. Morrison understood what Johnson was asking. The Shadowbane was surrounded by the heaviest defenses in the Vorthek fleet. Any ship that got that close would almost certainly be destroyed. Pete, that's a suicide mission, Morrison said quietly. Maybe, Johnson replied. But if it works, it could turn the tide of the battle. My weapons have already helped our pilots. Let me do this one last thing. Morrison was quiet for a long moment. Around him, the command center was filled with the sounds of battle coordination. Reports were coming in from across the solar system. As human ships continued their desperate attacks against the alien fleet. Do it, Morrison finally said. Godspeed, Pete. Colonel Johnson climbed into a modified fighter that had been equipped with Dr. Wright's signal disruptor. The device took up most of the space normally used for weapons, leaving him with only basic defensive systems. Lieutenant Tony Parker volunteered to fly escort. Even though both men knew it was almost certainly a one-way trip, the two fighters accelerated toward the center of the Vorthek fleet, where the massive Shadowbane waited like a dark mountain in space. Around them, the battle continued to rage as hundreds of human ships fought against the most powerful fleet in the galaxy. The fate of Earth hung in the balance, and everything depended on two brave men flying directly into the heart of enemy territory. Colonel Pete Johnson flew his fighter straight toward the massive Shadowbane. The alien flagship grew larger and larger on his screen until it filled his entire view. Weapons fire from dozens of Vorthek ships lit up the space around him like deadly fireworks. His escort, Lieutenant Tony Parker, stayed close beside him as they dodged through the storm of enemy fire. Pete, I'm reading massive energy buildup from their main guns, Parker said over the radio. They're trying to lock onto us. Johnson pushed his fighter to maximum speed. The small ship shook violently as plasma bolts exploded nearby. His shields were already down to 30% power, and they were still several minutes away from the target. The signal disruptor in his cargo bay was humanity's last hope of winning this battle. On the bridge of the Shadowbane, Captain Ziegther watched the two human fighters approach. He could not understand why anyone would fly directly at his flagship. It was the most heavily defended ship in the fleet. No enemy vessel had ever gotten close enough to cause serious damage. "All weapons target those fighters," Ziegther ordered. "Destroy them immediately." The Shadowbane's defensive guns opened fire with devastating force. Streams of plasma and quantum torpedoes filled the space around the approaching human ships. The smaller fighter, piloted by Lieutenant Parker, took a direct hit from a plasma cannon. The ship exploded in a brilliant flash of light. Colonel Johnson felt his heart sink as he watched Parker's fighter disappear. His young escort had volunteered to die so that Earth might live. Johnson gritted his teeth and continued his approach to the alien flagship. "Tony, I won't let your sacrifice be meaningless," Johnson whispered. The colonel's fighter was now less than 2 minutes from the optimal range for Dr. Wright's signal disruptor. But his ship was badly damaged from enemy fire. Warning lights flashed on his control panel, and his engines were running at dangerous temperatures. He might not make it to the target. Admiral Morrison watched the desperate mission from Earth's command center. Every person in the room was silent as they tracked Johnson's fighter on the main display. The colonel was humanity's last chance to break the Vorthic fleet's coordination. "Come on, Pete," Morrison said quietly. "Just a little bit further." Commander Lisa Barnes monitored the tactical situation across the entire solar system. The human swarm attacks were still causing damage to the alien fleet, but the cost was enormous. More than half of Earth's ships had been destroyed or severely damaged. Without Johnson's mission succeeding, the remaining human forces would not be able to continue fighting much longer. Johnson's fighter finally reached the optimal range for the signal disruptor. The device began transmitting on the same frequency that the Vorthak used to coordinate their fleet. Almost immediately, the effects were visible on the human tactical displays. "It's working," Barnes shouted. "The alien ships are losing coordination." Across the Vorthak fleet, confusion spread as the command network failed. Ship captains who had always followed orders from the flagship suddenly found themselves fighting independently. Some ships stopped firing while their crews tried to re-establish communication. Others continued attacking, but without coordination. With their neighbors. Captain Ziegther felt panic for the first time in his military career. His carefully organized fleet was falling apart before his eyes. Without the command network, each ship was operating alone. The perfect formation that had conquered dozens of worlds was breaking up into chaos. "Restore the command frequency," Ziegther shouted at his communications officer. "I cannot, Captain," the officer replied. "The human signal is jamming our entire network. We cannot coordinate fleet movements." Major Alex Turner saw the confusion in the alien fleet and immediately understood what had happened. Colonel Johnson's mission had succeeded. Now was the time for the final attack that would decide the battle. "All human ships, this is Lightning Leader," Turner broadcast on the general frequency. "The enemy has lost coordination. All units, converge." On the flagship, every remaining human ship in the solar system turned toward the Shadowbane. Fighters, destroyers, converted cargo ships, and orbital defense platforms all focused their weapons on the massive alien flagship. For the first time in the battle, the humans concentrated their entire force on a single target. The Shadowbane was powerful, but it could not fight hundreds of ships at once without support from its escorts. The other Vorthic vessels were too confused and disorganized to provide effective assistance. The legendary flagship found itself facing the combined fury of Earth's defenders. Lieutenant Carol Davis led her fighter squadron in a direct attack on the Shadowbane's main weapon batteries. Her pilots flew through intense defensive fire to reach their targets. One by one, the massive plasma cannons that could crack planets were destroyed by swarms of small human ships. Captain Danny Foster brought the Liberty and every other surviving destroyer into close range of the alien flagship. The human ships poured continuous fire into the Shadowbane's hull. The alien armor was incredibly strong, but it began to crack under the sustained bombardment from so many weapons. Dr. Susan Wright monitored the battle from her research station and made constant adjustments to keep the signal disruptor working. The Vorthek were trying desperately to restore their command network, but her jamming signal was too strong. The alien fleet remained divided and confused. Dr. Wright, the flagship is trying to break away from the battle, reported Dr. Mark Thompson. It looks like they're attempting to retreat. Wright smiled with grim satisfaction. The most feared warship in the galaxy was running away from Earth's defenders. But she knew the battle was not over yet. The Shadowbane was damaged but still dangerous. Captain Ziegther realized that his position was hopeless. His flagship was surrounded by hundreds of human ships. His escorts could not coordinate their defense, and his main weapons were being systematically destroyed. For the first time in his career, he considered surrender. But Vorthek warriors did not surrender. If he could not win the battle, he would at least destroy the human homeworld. Ziegther ordered his remaining crew to set course directly for Earth. The Shadowbane would ram the planet and eliminate the source of this unexpected resistance. Admiral Morrison saw the alien flagship change course toward Earth and understood Ziegther's desperate plan. The massive ship was still powerful enough to cause devastating damage if it reached the planet's surface. All orbital defense platforms, prepare to fire, Morrison ordered. We cannot let that ship reach Earth. The orbital platforms that surrounded Earth were humanity's most powerful weapons. Each platform carried dozens of the kinetic interceptors that Colonel Johnson's team had developed. If they could concentrate all their firepower on the approaching flagship, they might be able to stop it. Commander Helen Gray coordinated the defensive fire from her position on the primary orbital platform. She watched as the damaged Shadowbane approached Earth like a dark mountain falling from the sky. The alien ship was still firing its remaining weapons, but its course never changed. All platforms, fire on my mark, Gray said into her communicator. 3, 2, 1, mark. Every orbital defense platform fired simultaneously. Hundreds of kinetic interceptors accelerated toward the Shadowbane at incredible speed. The metal projectiles struck the alien ship's hull like the hammer of an angry god. Massive explosions lit up the darkness as the flagship's armor finally gave way. The Shadowbane broke apart under the devastating bombardment. Its hull cracked open, and internal explosions tore the massive ship into pieces. Captain Ziegther and his crew died as their legendary warship was destroyed by the weapons of the primitive species they had come to conquer. The remaining Vorthak ships, seeing their flagship destroyed and their fleet scattered, began to retreat from the solar system. The survivors would carry word back to the Vorthak Empire that humanity was not the easy target they had expected. Admiral Morrison stood in the command center and watched the alien fleet disappear into deep space. Around him, his exhausted staff began to assess the cost of victory. Earth had survived, but the price had been enormous. More than half of humanity's spacefaring fleet had been destroyed or damaged, but they had won. The deadliest warship in the galaxy lay in ruins around Earth. The Vorthak Empire had learned that humans would fight with desperate courage when their survival was threatened. The galaxy would never underestimate humanity again. Colonel Pete Johnson had given his life to make victory possible. His signal disruptor had broken the alien fleet's coordination at the crucial moment. Lieutenant Tony Parker and hundreds of other brave souls had died to protect their homeworld. Their sacrifice would never be forgotten. As news of the victory spread across Earth and its colonies, people celebrated in the streets. Humanity had faced extinction and had emerged victorious through courage, ingenuity, and determination. The species that had once been confined to a single star system had proven they belonged among the stars. The war for Earth's place in the galaxy was just beginning, but humanity had shown they would not go quietly into the darkness. They had faced the deadliest warship in known space and had emerged triumphant. The universe would never be the same.